Welcome back, my friends. And if the camera suddenly falls over, it's because part of my tripod broke. So, be prepared for a roller coaster. But I will do my best to keep that from happening. Today, we are on Chapter 5. And I do apologize for the abrupt cutoff from the last chapter. I was, the way it ended, I didn't usually do my signature sign-off. And that is because I originally intended to do 2 chapters, which I did not. Unfortunately, I messed up a bit of the recording and could not do the 2nd chapter, so that is why it ended the way it did. But today, perhaps I will do two chapters just to make up for that. However, I was hoping to get in a little bit of extra filming today, because there are some things that I would like to talk about on this channel, once again, and so do stay tuned for when that comes out. It is very important. It pertains to all of us, to our liberties, to our freedoms, to everything. But for now, let us step away from this insane reality that we live in and enjoy ourselves in a different one. Although one perhaps not too different from our own. Chapter 5. Dr. Cooper remained motionless. He could tell the sorceress was baiting him, testing him in a war of nerves. He kept an eye on Jay and Leela. Brave kids. They sat very still. Mara waited for just a few moments to let the terror fully sink in, and then spoke. "What kind of man are you really, Dr. Cooper?" she asked with malicious mocking. "One who truly loves knowledge above riches? We will see. We will see." She looked at Jay, still in the hawk's clutches, and smiled wickedly. She leaned forward and gazed at Dr. Cooper as she said, "For the life of your son, Doctor, answer me this riddle. It fills the heart, but craving still. Man, though full, it cannot fill." Dr. Cooper knew Jay was praying, and he prayed himself, even while he returned the evil gaze of the sorceress. The answer came to him. "Greed," he said. "It fills the heart of man. And man, even though filled with riches, is never satisfied." The woman raised one eyebrow, and then nodded to the hawk. The hawk released Jay, and Jay tried breathing, a privilege he was very thankful to have again. Dr. Cooper offered a silent prayer of thanks. "Very good, Doctor," said Mara. "And now for the life of your daughter. It crushes the weak, it rules the poor, but he who owns it, it rules the more." Leela was very, very still, waiting and praying, her face getting paler with each passing second. Dr. Cooper prayed too, looking at the edge of that sword, only a fraction of an inch from Leela's neck. "Thank you, Lord," Dr. Cooper prayed silently. He had the answer for this riddle as well. Power. Power crushes the weak and rules over the poor, but he who owns it, it is enslaved by it. It rules him most of all. The woman's eyes grew wide. She was impressed. She nodded to the wolf, and he released Leela. Both Dr. Cooper and Leela breathed a loud sigh of relief. "You are a lover of knowledge, Doctor," she said. a man of great wit. Dr. Cooper was watching the situation carefully, and he noticed the faint nod of the woman's head and the shadow of the wolf falling across his chair. The wolf's powerful arm took hold of Dr. Cooper's head as the beast's sword came at his throat. But Dr. Cooper's legs flipped up in a flash and clamped around the wolf's neck. In an instant, the wolf sailed over the chair and Dr. Cooper and landed on his back with a thud. The wolf mask went sailing end over end through the air, and now the wolf was just a sheepish, embarrassed man, his sword suddenly in Dr. Cooper's hand. Dr. Cooper stood ready, holding the sword, his eyes on everyone in the room. The sorceress watched in amazement. And she kept watching, apparently waiting for something. "Well," she finally asked, "he is yours. Do to him as you wish." "That will be quite enough," Dr. Cooper scolded, his patience at an end. "We've had enough of your games and your riddles, and there will be certainly no bloodshed." She only leaned back and looked at him with awe. "A rare kind of man you are, Doctor. A very special man. A man who wants no trouble and means no harm." She leaned forward and asked intently, "And has not come to take Anak's treasure?" Dr. Cooper leaned forward a little himself. "No, I have not." She studied him for a moment and then said, "If you are here for any other reason, you are indeed the first." Then she smiled a crafty smile and said, "You have tested well, Doctor. I find you to have great prowess, and also a strong spirit to rule and contain it." She suddenly lowered her voice as if she wanted no one else to hear. "Could it be that you are a man worthy to challenge Anak?" "Challenge what? What is this Anak? All you've mentioned and given me is your superstitious talk about your god, your pagan religion, your tricks, and your riddles. But I still have one man possibly dead and another trapped in those tombs of yours, and I don't need any more idle talk about ghosts, spirits, or so-called gods." Dr. Cooper calmed himself and said more quietly, "My concern is for my 2 lost men. All I want to do is find them, if they're still alive. Please, I need more facts, concrete answers." "Something you can see with your eyes, Doctor?" She removed both hands from under the fleece, where she'd kept them all this time. The wolf, hawk, and man in crimson turned away in horror and started humming the song of Harafa. Dr. Cooper was struck silent. Jay looked on in horror, while Leela felt sick. The woman held both hands in front of her palms, forward, fingers spread. Dr. Cooper looked twice. Jay even counted. Each hand had not 5, but 6 fingers. The woman's voice dropped to a low, ominous tone. "You have seen it, Doctor. With your own eyes, the 6th finger of the Anakim. The badge of ultimate power. These others have learned to fear it, as will you, for you will find that Anak is the fearsome one, as real as these hands." Dr. Cooper was stunned. Such information was suddenly taking form in his mind. "The Anakim," he said with great wonder. In 2 Samuel, a giant from Gath, a man with 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. And of all the giants, all the fearsome ones, not one was mightier or more fearsome than Anak. and it is his spirit that rules over the tombs of the Anakim, and over his people, the Yarim, and I, Mara, am his high priestess, appointed by Harafa himself, for only a true descendant of Anak can rule as priest. A direct descendant of the Anakim, said Dr. Cooper in awe. As such, my power and rule over the Yarim is limitless. Harafa says it is to be, and so it is. And if anyone should oppose you, they must face Anak, of course. Mara the sorceress smiled a cunning smile and said, "Now do you have your facts, Doctor?" She tucked her hands inside the fleece again and told her aides she had done so. The hawk, wolf, and man in crimson turned toward her again. "You will be released," she said to the Coopers, "but you should know that you have trespassed, and on a sacred night of sacrifice for us. Be assured, anyone who disturbs Anak at such a time always pays a horrible price. If you are faint of heart, and if you fear death, you must forsake your quest here and leave the tombs immediately." "And my 2 men?" "Dismiss any thought of them." Leaning forward in her chair, she almost seemed to challenge Dr. Cooper by saying, "Consider them dead." She waited to hear his reply. Dr. Cooper pondered her words for a moment as Jay and Leela watched him. They knew what he was going to say. "Where can I find Anak?" That answer seemed to be the one she expected. She shook her head in pity, but her eyes were smiling. "You are not that mighty." "My God is mighty." Now her eyes became cold and penetrating, as though she was trying to stare Dr. Cooper down. "Mightier than my God, Jacob Cooper. You speak as a foolish man, one who has never seen the stars blotted out by Anak's form, who has never stood in Anak's shadow, and known his life will end horribly in that very instant. You will never find Anak, Doctor. He will find you. Silent. His spirit is everywhere, cunning, more vicious than you can possibly imagine. He watches us all, but is never seen. He kills and not a sound is heard. We always know where he has been, but never where he will be." Dr. Cooper remained unshaken. "Where can I find him?" The archaeologist's determined courage impressed the sorceress. She looked into his eyes for a moment, studying him, pondering his words. She looked him up and down, considering his strengths. "If your God is so mighty," she said, "and you put such great trust in him, let the 2 of you discern these words." Then with a wry and mocking smile, she began to sing the Song of Harafa, singing actual lyrics to the melody in a strange language. Dr. Cooper listened intently until she finished, and then asked, "A riddle?" She smiled wickedly. "You know not the answer?" Dr. Cooper thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Perhaps because I'm not playing for the lives of my children." With a very willy glint in her eyes, the sorceress replied, "Oh, but you will be, Dr. Cooper. You will be." Dr. Cooper was about to ask her what she meant, but she abruptly said, "Our visit is over. You are released." The Hawk and the Wolf, minus his frightening mask, escorted the Coopers from the sorceress's cave and back the way they had come. Dr. Cooper immediately took out his writing pad and scribbled down the strange words to the song the sorceress had sung. So far they were meaningless, and even though he tried asking the Hawk and the Wolf about the song and its words, the two gruesome escorts remained stubbornly silent and mysterious. Their path took an unexpected twist and did not return to the ceremonial cave where the Coopers had first been captured. Rather, the Hawk and the Wolf led them over a hill, through a dry riverbed, and then up a very steep trail to the brow of another hill, where they stopped. It was only now that the Coopers knew where they were. They could see their camp in the valley below, a tiny cluster of little tents, pitched next to the unearthed Philistine temple of Dagon. Bill and Jeff were there by the fire, rifles in their hands, wary and tense. The Hawk handed Dr. Cooper's gun back to him, and then he and the Wolf were gone, their mission accomplished. The Coopers hurried down the hill to the camp. Dr. Cooper saw Bill raise his rifle. "Bill, it's us!" The stunned look on the two men's faces was almost comical, and there was a significant time lapse before they broke into ecstatic smiles and started hollering, "Doc, Jay, and Leela! Well, praise the Lord!" Then came the reunion, the laughter, the hugs. "We thought we'd lost you for sure," Bill said with tears in his eyes. "We didn't know what to do," Jeff added. "Well," said Dr. Cooper, "we have a lot to fill you in on." "But what about Talmai Ben Arba? Has there been any sign of him?" "Nothing," said Jeff. "Oh, great," muttered Bill. "So now we've lost him too, huh?" "I don't know. That big guy is so willy there's no telling what happened to him." "So what happened to you?" asked Bill. The Coopers all looked at each other, sharing an incredible story they couldn't wait to tell. "Well, let's talk about it over some food," said Dr. Cooper. They gathered around the campfire as Bill opened some rations. "We need some firewood," Leela observed. "Fine," said Dr. Cooper. "Don't go too far." She went toward the hills to see what she could find. Dr. Cooper bit into a cold leftover biscuit and related their experience with the Yarim holy men and the very mysterious Mara the sorceress. Bill and Jeff were amazed. Jay cringed just remembering. Then a pressing question came to Jay's mind. "Dad, that riddle game she played with you, just what was that all about?" Dr. Cooper drew a deep breath. He could still feel the tension of that moment, and he was so glad it was over. It revealed a definite Philistine influence on the Yarim culture. Even Samson was involved in that sort of thing, in the Book of Judges, the old Philistine custom of bantering and challenging with riddles. "Well, I didn't appreciate that game at all. What if you had answered wrong?" Dr. Cooper only shook his head. "Well, praise God for his grace. If I hadn't been so upset about Mr. Pippin's greed and Mr. Andrews' obsession with power, I may not have had the right answers on my mind." But Mara had to have a reason for all those games. It was like she was testing me, not only in knowledge, but in physical prowess. First there was the riddle game, and then the mortal challenge from the wolf character. "I thought you did really well," Jay said proudly. Well, so did she, apparently. With that, Dr. Cooper took out his writing pad and looked at the strange words to the song she'd sung. "But I don't think the game's over." "What do you have there?" asked Bill. "A song, a riddle, whatever. It's like she's almost daring us. As soon as she knew we wouldn't be leaving until we faced this Anak, whoever or whatever he is, she sang this song to me. And if it's another Philistine riddle game, it has to be some kind of clue, a piece of vital information." "Well done, Doctor," came a very sudden and startling voice from the darkness beyond the camp. Every weapon they had was immediately in hand and aimed toward that booming voice. "Well," said Talmai Ben Arba, stepping into the light of the campfire, Again we meet. And again I receive the same heavily armed welcome. Dr. Cooper stood to his feet and pushed his hat back a little. An unconscious gesture that showed he was quite surprised and very, very curious. There just wasn't that much free, dead, burnable wood in this kind of country. The short, scrubby brush was a very tough sort of plant, so intent on surviving that it wasn't about to leave any dead branches lying around. Leela found a few sticks here and there, but had just about resigned herself to returning to camp with a far less than a full armload. She looked back. Uh-oh. She'd gone around the hill now, out of sight of the camp, and she knew that wasn't safe. She decided to start back. What was that? It sounded like a child crying. And it sounded very desperate. She set the wood down near a large rock she'd be able to find again and headed toward the sound. Ben Arba looked none the worse for wear and answered the question at hand without Dr. Cooper having to ask it. I escaped by another route, Doctor. The tombs have many available to the one who knows where to find them. And as for your thoughts on Mara, the sorceress, and her cryptic riddles, yes, you have her well figured out. Her words do have meaning, Doctor, for the man who can decipher them. You would be wise to always consider every word she says, every letter of every word. He looked at the sky and said excitedly, the moon is getting lower. Dr. Cooper couldn't care less about the moon. He looked at Ben Arba for a long, long time before he said anything. Then finally motioned to the big man to a nearby stone. Have a seat, Talmai. We have a few things to discuss. Leela noticed it was getting darker and saw the moon sinking down behind the mountain. Now she was really torn between seeking out the crying she heard and hurrying back to camp. It was getting very dark and scary out there. There it was again. A fearful cry. Someone in trouble. She was getting close. Very close now. She could hear it somewhere below her. Not far down the hillside was a deep ravine. It was coming from there. She had found a path that led down the hill. She would find out what it was and then get right back to camp. Her heart was starting to pound. She was beginning to feel she'd been away from camp far too long. Dr. Cooper and Ben Arba sat by the small, smoldering fire, nose to nose, and Dr. Cooper had all the sternness he needed to outweigh Ben Arba's stubbornness. Keep going, Dr. Cooper said. I want you to tell me just how much you know about this sorceress lady. But Ben Arba kept looking toward the horizon. Soon the moon will set behind that mountain. It will be Harava's moment. Just answer my question. Even Dr. Cooper's patience was wearing thin. Ben Arba gave a disgusted sigh and grudgingly answered, What you said about the riddle caught my attention. The words of Mara the sorceress always mean more than you think. The answers to the riddles, for instance, greed and power. She chose those riddles for a reason? Ben Arba looked at the moon again. It won't be long now. Leela reached the edge of the ravine, and the beam of her flashlight caught a small white creature. A baby goat, she said, immediately filled with pity. The little goat was caught in a pit in the rocks, bleeding. It paced back and forth, trying to find a way out. Leela looked for a way to reach it, found a likely route down, and then called, Hang on, little fella, I'm coming. Ben Arba had the moon, and only the moon, on his mind. Doctor, have I told you enough? May we move on to what else I know? All right, what's this you keep saying about the moon? Ben Arba grabbed his rifle, an excited glimmer in his eye. "Tonight is the night of sacrifice, Doctor. During the nights of the full moon, the Yarim leave a sacrifice for Harafa. Whatever is left for him, be it a sheep or a goat or bags of grain, it is gone within and out a trace. When morning comes, something consumes it. If we hurry, we may be able to see what it is." Dr. Cooper and the others couldn't believe what they'd heard. They sprang to their feet. "You could have told me this before," said Dr. Cooper. I tried, Ben Arba insisted. Then a thought hit them all. "Where's Leela?" Ben Arba grabbed Dr. Cooper's arm. "Leela, the girl, she's not here." "No, Ben Arba's expression changed from one of excitement and glee to one of incredible horror. "She's out there?" With careful steps and just the right handholds, Leela lowered herself into the pit. The little goat hurried over to her and nuzzled her leg. "Hey, it's okay, little guy. I'm here." She gave the goat a pet and scratch, and then a flute began to play. Leela withdrew her hand from the goat as if she'd been burned. She listened. The flute sounded far away, but she could hear the melody clearly. The Song of Harafa. Dr. Cooper, Jay, Bill, and Jeff were ready, armed like a small army, and so is Ben Arba. They stormed from the camp, following Ben Arba's leading. "How far?" Dr. Cooper asked. "It depends on where it is," said Ben Arba. "There are many pits and crevices in the rocks where the sacrifices are left. We must find the one they have chosen to use this night." "Leela!" they called out, but no answer came. Ben Arba stopped short. "No." They could all hear it. Other voices were joining now, singing and wailing that eerie melody. "They are calling to him," said Ben Arba. "Don't make a sound, please. It is death to trespass upon the site of a sacrifice. You will bring their spears down on us." Dr. Cooper listened carefully. "The singing seems to be centered around the ravine down there." "Yes, that is one of the places for sacrificing," said Ben Arba. They headed for it, moving toward the singing, feeling like they were walking into a black and threatening storm. Leela was scared. The Song of Harafa was swirling and echoing all around her in that rocky pit, droning in her ears, making her shiver. She picked up the little goat. "Come on, let's get out of here." With careful but hurried steps, she began to climb out of the pit. One step, then another, a handhold here, a handhold there. She wondered if she could possibly get out in time. She gasped and thought her heart would stop. Just above her head, a gruesome, grinning, demonic mask, hanging on a wooden stake, leered down at her. Now she was more than scared. Dr. Cooper and the others found a small bundle of firewood. Beyond that was a likely path toward a ravine. Ben Arba threw the bolt on his rifle, ramming a cartridge into the chamber. The others did the same, then hurried down the path. Leela was anxious, looking for the path out of the ravine. The moon was gone now, and the darkness hid everything. She pressed ahead, shining her light this way and that, then that way. The goat was fidgeting in her arms. "What's the matter, boy?" she asked. Behind her, a star, close to the horizon, vanished. Then a star just above it disappeared as well. There was absolutely no sound. But Leela could feel a presence. She kept looking for the path. She thought she found it and headed for it. More stars disappeared higher and higher in the sky. A shadow began to form, an area where no stars could be seen. It grew ominously, rising steadily out of the earth. Leela finally, gratefully found the path. She quickened her step. The little goat began to whimper. Ben Arba led the others to the edge of the ravine. He saw something there. With an anguished and muffled cry, he bounded down the hillside. The others were startled. "What is it?" Bill asked. Jay saw it first and couldn't speak a word. He could only grab his father and point frantically. Dr. Cooper saw it and dashed down the hillside right behind Ben Arba. Leela kept struggling up the hill, trying to find the path through the rocks, the little goat wriggling and bleeding in her arms. She could no longer hold the terrified animal. "Okay, you can make it from here," she said, setting him down on the ground. The little goat dashed up the hill as if fleeing for its life. Leela knew she was very, very frightened, but she realized she had to keep cool. She hurried up the path, trying not to panic. Behind her, and without a sound, an immense black pillar jutted into the sky like a thunderhead. It was shaped like a man, it had eyes, and it was moving toward her. And that's the end of chapter 6. Sorry, chapter 5. Oh, all right, we'll go on to chapter 6. Talmai Ben Arba and Dr. Cooper stopped short on a precarious rock formation. They saw Leela far below, scrambling up the rocks, fleeing for her life. They could see a huge, black, hideous thing right behind her, a deep man-shaped shadow swallowing up the starlight, hiding the ground beneath it. Ben Arba jerked his rifle to his shoulder. "Anak!" he shouted as the rifle fired, the blue flame from the barrel lighting up the rocks. They heard Leela scream. Dr. Cooper was on his way to her, with Jay, Jeff, and Bill right behind. The little goat went running by them in overwhelming terror. They could see Leela on the ground, but could no longer see the shadow. "Cover us," Dr. Cooper ordered, and Jeff and Bill remained above, rifles ready as he and Jay scrambled down the rocks. All around them the song of Harafa melted into a horrible clamor of wails like the cries of countless souls falling into hell. Ben Arba remained on the high rock pinnacle, his rifle ready, his eyes peering into the darkness, attempting to examine every shadow, every crevice between the rocks, every dark area on the landscape below that could possibly be his target. He didn't know if he'd hit it. He could see nothing. A spear whistled by his ear. He spun and fired the rifle at a small moving shadow. Another spear glanced off a rock just behind him. The Yarim were attacking. When Dr. Cooper and Jay got to Leela, she threw her arms around her father and held him, not saying a word, not crying, only gasping for air. He didn't hesitate a moment, but carried her back up the trail. The eerie, warlike cries of the Yarim surged like angry waves all around them. Dr. Cooper hurried up the trail, ducking the spears and arrows as he carried Leela. Jay watched behind them, and Jeff and Bill were above, still looking in every direction, trying to pinpoint the source of the deadly weapons. The Yarim, unseen in the darkness, were clambering down the rocks, moving in on them like a rock slide. Ben Arba searched for cover, even while he looked for targets. Savages, fanatics. He yelled at them, along with many filthy names in several different languages. He fired his rifle this direction, then that, in front, behind, spinning and looking about. But the arrows were coming out of the dark, and he couldn't see who was shooting them. The Coopers ran by, and he followed them, firing several more shots at nothing in particular. Suddenly, they're not so timid, Dr. Cooper called to him. Not when their God is with them, said Ben Arba. Did you see where it went? It vanished, Doctor, and let us do the same. They fled back to camp, out from under the attack of the deadly shower of spears and arrows. The attackers did not follow them. As for the ghost, the thing, the horrible god called Anak, it was gone, just like that. There was no peace in the camp that night. All around them the hills were crawling with Yarim, all unseen in the darkness, still calling to the Harafa, wailing, crying, hooting and howling, swishing through the stiff grass and clambering over the rocks. The night was black, and the air was alive with terror. Everything, the hills, the crazy people hiding in them, the cries and wails of those people, the ghost itself. Seemed terribly close, terribly dangerous, like an avalanche of evil about to crush them all. Ben Arba, Bill, and Jeff, all heavily armed, were keeping watch around the camp. Dr. Cooper, Jay, and Leela were inside their tent, huddled around a lantern. Leela hadn't said a word since they'd found her on the ground, back in the ravine. She was still shaking, staring, trying to find some words, but unable to. Jay and Dr. Cooper just held her close and prayed soothingly, hoping their prayers would also drown out the chilling sounds outside. I saw him, Dad, Leela said suddenly. He hugged her. I know. I saw him. She repeated, simply because she had to. I saw him. We did too, said Jay. He was there. He was looking right at me. Dr. Cooper had plenty of questions, but he knew he had to wait. She had to be ready. Did you see how tall he was, Dad? Dr. Cooper didn't wait to answer. Did you see how tall he was? She asked again. I'm not sure, Dr. Cooper finally said. It was hard to tell from where we were standing. Leela was trying to think. I've never seen anyone so big in my life. Dr. Cooper ventured a question. Was it a man, Leela? Did it seem human? She tried to think and tried to remember, but finally she could only shake her head. I could only see his eyes. He was looking right at me, and... She broke off her sentence and stared in silence for a moment. He was going to kill me, wasn't he? Shh, Dr. Cooper said, holding her close. It's over. You're safe now. But she could hear the wailing of the Yarim through the cloth walls of the tent. All three of them could. They did not feel safe. They did not feel safe all night. It was not a long night. Most of it had already been spent, and the sun was soon rising over the valley. Sometime before the light came, the Yarim seemed to melt away into the rocky terrain, and their cries faded away. And as the darkness gave way to daylight, some of the horror went away with it. Bill and Jeff could see clearly now, which made them feel much more secure. Ben Arba even lay down to catch a few winks of sleep. Dr. Cooper emerged from the tent while the morning sky was still pink, and the air still had the leftover chill of the night. He was tired, but his walk was firm, and his eyes were determined. He joined Bill and Jeff beside the crackling breakfast fire. Thanks for keeping watch. No problem, Doc, said Jeff. Get any sleep? Enough for now, I suppose. The kids have been sleeping for a few hours. How's Leela? Bill asked. She'll be ready for another day of it, I imagine. How are you two holding up? We took turns on the watch, Jeff explained. We got some sleep, but not much. Dr. Cooper noticed Ben Arba curled up in the sand near the edge of the camp, his rifle still in his hands, snoring in a catnap. Dr. Cooper turned his back on Ben Arba and beckoned to Bill and Jeff to speak to them in a lowered voice. I don't want any more guessing games with Mr. Ben Arba. Bill, I want you to take the Jeep into Gath and check around. See what you can find out about this guy, where he really comes from, if he has any family around here, and how long he's been interested in this so-called treasure. The guy knows too much to be a newcomer. Somehow, he's connected with this whole thing, and I mean closely connected. I want to know exactly how. Yeah, said Bill. I think it's about time. I'll go this morning. I'll be taking a walk with him before breakfast to check out the sacrificial site in the daylight. Take off after we're gone, and maybe he won't get curious. There was a sleepy snort. Ben Arba finally stirred and awoke from his restless sleep. Ah, he muttered, looking around. So that terrible night is over. Dr. Cooper surveyed the surrounding hills. They were silent and empty now, just as before. It was as if the horrors of the night had never happened. Well, guys, how long before breakfast? He said finally. Oh, I can get it started any time, said Jeff. Okay, give us another hour or so. In the meantime, Talmai, let's you and I take a hike. Ben Arba's bushy eyebrows arched. He grinned and picked up his rifle. Bill picked up the keys to the Jeep. The trail back to the site of the sacrifice seemed much longer in the daylight. Perhaps this was because they weren't running for their lives in the dark. They made their long way warily, watching for any movement in the rocks, listening for any sound. Nothing appeared, and all was deathly quiet. For all they knew, they were totally alone in this rocky, barren wasteland. Ah, a souvenir, said Ben Arba, picking up an arrow from the sandy trail. The point was finely honed in metal. He showed it to Dr. Cooper. You could shave with this edge, Doctor. Dr. Cooper needed no convincing. Ben Arba kept the arrow, and they continued on their way. Ben Arba was feeling a little more conversational this morning. You were right about the Philistine influence. At one time, the Yarim were not called the Yarim at all. They were originally a sect of the Philistines. They worshipped Dagon and all the other Philistine deities. That is, until Harafa came along. Last night, you called him Anak, said Dr. Cooper. Ben Arba was caught off guard, but then he smiled and laughed a little. Well done, Doctor. Well done. Yes, I know his name. What else do you know? Ben Arba gave a shrug. Maybe it is time I talk about it. He slung his rifle comfortably over his shoulder and began. Anak appeared to these people about 10 years ago, and it was then that they became the Yarim, the fearful ones. Before that, they really had nothing to be afraid of. They had lived in these hills for generations as the last remaining Philistines, and they never gave any thought to the fact that this was originally the land of the Anakim, the fearsome giants. Why should they? The sons of Anak were gone, conquered by the invading Israelites under Joshua. Yes, there were a few sacred descendants like Goliath, who was killed by David, but those last remaining giants lived among the Philistines until they became Philistines, and that is the last anyone ever heard of the Anakim. Until recently, when Anak himself appeared. Anak's ghost, they say, returning to rule over the land taken from him so long ago. He was a horrible, terrifying, bloodthirsty spirit, demanding offerings, worship, and sacrifices. And Mara the sorceress? She came in the village claiming to be his priestess. She rules over the Yarim now, and they obey her out of sheer terror of Anak. They could see the ravine where Leela had been, and their own footprints leading hurriedly away from it. They made sure they had their weapons ready as they headed down. They entered the ravine, where they found more arrows and some spears. For only a few hundred armed men, the Yarim can rally quite an attack, Dr. Cooper observed. But they still missed, said Ben Arba. Then they saw the rocky pit where the little goat had been. Now that it was day, the pit didn't look quite so dark and frightening, and the trail leading to it was easy to follow. Ben Arba stopped short. Dr. Cooper saw it too. There, grinning in the sunlight, was a fiendish demonic mask, mounted on a wooden stake and decorated with beads and feathers. It was a toothy, crooked smile, and it was leering with huge, bulbous eyes into the pit. There, grinning in the sunlight, was a fiendish, demonic mask, mounted on a wooden stake and decorated with beads and feathers. It had a toothy, crooked smile on its face, and it was leering with huge, bulbous eyes into the pit. Across the pit, from the first gruesome spectator, was another one, this time the bleached skull of a goat, mounted on another wooden stake, decorated with colorful ribbons that fluttered in the breeze. It, too, was staring into the pit. There were other strange markers as well. As Dr. Cooper and Ben Arba came to the pit's edge, they could count 10 in all. There were other skulls of animals, more masks, some small religious carvings that looked like totem poles. Dr. Cooper noticed that several of them resembled the weird costumes the Yarim holy men had been wearing in the ceremonial cave, all facing into the pit. Ben Arba looked carefully at each marker and explained, "These all had something to do with the sacrifice last night. This was a very sacred place." Dr. Cooper looked carefully into the pit. It was not very deep, only about 6 feet, and about 20 feet across. The rock walls were steep, the sandy floor smooth and featureless. "Well, this is where that thing came from," he said, finally finding a way to climb down. Ben Arba remained above, his rifle ready, as Dr. Cooper stepped down into the sand. Dr. Cooper felt like he was standing in a small arena, with 10 grisly spectators watching his every move. He looked all around the floor of the pit, but nothing caught his eye. There were no footprints, other than Leela's and the goat's. "Just what do you expect to find down there?" asked Ben Arba. "Something. A clue, I guess. If that thing was real, it had to get in here somehow. It had to leave a mark or a print." Ben Arba only shrugged. "Maybe yes, maybe no. A ghost lives by its own rules." Ben Arba walked slowly around the pit, examining the rocky walls. He saw no cracks or passages, no telltale seams. He suddenly stopped. Something didn't look quite normal. Toward the other end of the pit was a depression in the sand, about the size of a dinner plate, but it was half covered with what was certainly a fresh layer of sand, as if someone had tried to cover it up. He approached it carefully, testing each step he took. What had made that little dip in the sand? What was... The ground gave a little under his foot. He stepped back quickly, and the sand began to move. Ben Arba cocked his rifle. "What is it, Doctor?" Dr. Cooper took a few more steps back, looking at the strange moving sand. It was as if a hole had suddenly opened, under the sand. The sand was flowing downward toward a deep center, like grain down a funnel. The depression quickly grew wider and wider. "Get back, Doctor, get back!" Ben Arba shouted. Dr. Cooper got clear of the sandy floor, perching on the rock wall of the pit as he continued to watch the sand disappear downward, as if being consumed from beneath. Then, just as mysteriously as it had begun, the motion stopped. The sand came to a rest, and the floor of the pit was smooth and flat once again. "What was that, Doctor?" Ben Arba asked, amazed. Dr. Cooper was fascinated and very puzzled. He shook his head. I haven't the slightest idea." Just then there was a sound that pierced the desert silence, the bleat of a small goat. Ben Arba looked toward the hills and could see it. "The sacrifice, Doctor," he said. Dr. Cooper climbed out of the pit and could see the little goat bounding toward them over the rocks, its white coat shining brightly in the sunshine. "Friendly little fellow, isn't he?" Dr. Cooper remarked. The goat went first to Ben Arba, who gave it a few scratches behind its ears. Then Ben Arba noticed the collar around its neck. He knelt to examine it. He said, "Yes, this was the sacrifice, a gift from the old goatherd, one leg. This is the mark, his mark, on the collar." Dr. Cooper was very interested in that. "The goatherd missing a leg? We've met." Ben Arba looked off toward the hills, voicing his thoughts as they came to him. "The goat is free and alive. Anak Harafa did not get his gift. Thanks to our meddling last night, we have scorned his sacrifice, and someone will have to pay." What are you saying?" Ben Arba looked right at Dr. Cooper and said, "I am saying the goatherd could be in grave danger, and it could be our doing." The home of the little goatherd, One Leg, was on the other side of the mountain from the cliff village of the Yarim. Ben Arba knew the way, and they all made the trip. None of them had any desire to be left alone. They hurried, hoping for the best, yet expecting the worst. The men carried their weapons and were ready for trouble. The little goat ran on ahead, eager to return home. They came around the mountainside and finally caught sight of the humble stone and mud dwelling, perched on the side of the hill. Some goat pens were nearby. There was no sign of the goatherd. Dr. Cooper instinctively crouched down, and the others did likewise. Something was definitely wrong. "More of those markers," he said. Jay and Leela got there first, looking at the strange ceremonial markers of the Yarim. All around the goatherd's little homestead were skulls, masks, hideous ornaments, all on brightly colored stakes, all facing inward toward the goatherd's dwelling, all decorated with ribbons, skins, feathers, weavings. "They've been here too," said Jeff. Ben Arba said slowly, "And I am afraid that he has also been here." Ben Arba's gaze toward the sky directed their attention to some huge black vultures circling high overhead. Other scavengers were perched on the house and on the rocks above the goat pens. They were screeching in protest at being disturbed. Dr. Cooper led the way, and the party slowly crept down the hill. The sun was hot, and the thick air carried some very unpleasant smells. The vultures screeched and fluttered up the hillside a few yards, and then a few more, and then a few more of these intruders kept coming closer. The masks on the stakes seemed to laugh at them with hideous, toothy expressions. Soon they could see into the goat pen, and the sight wasn't pleasant. The goats, about 20 of them, lay dead, thrown about the pen as if by a whirlwind. The little white goat bleated as it jumped through the broken fence and found its dead mother. No one could say a word. They all stared at the sight until Dr. Cooper broke the spell of horror by moving on toward the house. They followed him, lagging just a little, their eyes darting everywhere. Dr. Cooper rounded the corner of the home and stopped short, crouching, listening, his eyes wide. He beckoned to Ben Arba and Jeff, who came closer with their rifles. Both men brought their rifles into readiness when they saw what Dr. Cooper saw. The others came very slowly around the corner as well, and then froze a safe distance away. There was no longer a doorway. An immense hole had been torn through the side of the house. The rough stones were strewn everywhere, and what used to be the door now lay here and there in splinters. Dr. Cooper stepped forward, his gun ready in his hand, and ventured to look inside. He instantly spun around and kept them all back with his hand. "Jay, Leela," he said, his voice very controlled, "please step over there and wait for us." He was gesturing to a small open area a little further around the house. They obeyed him and hurried toward it. When they were gone, Jeff and Ben Arba stepped forward to join Dr. Cooper. Ben Arba took a look inside the house, and his face immediately twisted with horror and disgust. Jeff, shocked, slumped against the wall, taking deep breaths to recover. Ben Arba found a familiar wooden peg in the rubble and showed it to the others. "One leg. The goat herd," Dr. Cooper said for all of them. "We're too late." Jeff shook his head in horror and amazement. "I've hunted grizzlies and Kodiaks. Never seen any of them that could do this." Ben Arba was strangely silent. Dr. Cooper saw a genuine fear in his face, a fear that had not been there before. Ben Arba could feel Dr. Cooper looking at him. He struggled for words. "He has grown much worse," he whispered. "What was that?" Dr. Cooper asked. Ben Arba seemed to be talking to himself as he muttered, "He has become a monster. Much worse. It was only a goat. Only one little goat. There was no need to do this." A cry came just then from Jay and Leela. "Dad! Hey, everybody!" The men dashed around the house in an instant, guns ready, expecting the worst. Jay and Leela were all right. They'd found something on the ground. Dr. Cooper and the others hurried to see what it was. "Ah," said Ben Arba. Dr. Cooper sank to one knee, pushed his hat back a little, and nodded slowly to himself. There before them, in one soft patch of ground, was the first direct evidence of whatever had been here. A footprint. Dr. Cooper held up his forearm, just above it, his elbow above the heel. His outstretched fingers fell short of the toes by a few inches. As for the toes, it was clear to see that they numbered 6. Dr. Cooper looked up at the others, particularly Ben Arba. "Well, I guess that's good news and bad news." He looked at the footprint again. "The good news is a ghost doesn't leave tangible footprints. So now we know for sure this thing is physical, real, alive. The bad news is..." He looked back toward the house, what was left of the goat herd's house. I think it's all bad news, said Jeff. Ben Arba was visibly shaken. The old cockiness was gone. The news is very bad, Doctor. Never before has Anak shown such fierceness, such rage. And never before has he ventured this far from the tombs to take a life. Take a life? Leela asked fearfully. Dr. Cooper put a gentle hand on her shoulder. The old goatherd is dead. Murdered. With merciless timing, an impatient vulture underlined Dr. Cooper's words with a rude screech. Now Jay and Leela felt the same chilling sensation they could read in the faces of the others, that unshakable feeling that somewhere up in the hills among the rocks, hiding in the crevices, or maybe even closer than they dared to imagine, a monster was waiting, silently prowling, and they were all being watched, followed, hunted. Leela could see the little goat still nuzzling its dead mother, and she struggled to ask, I'm the one who ruined that sacrifice. Is it my fault? Ben Arba answered very firmly, No, child. You did what was right, what any decent human would do. As for this beast, what difference could one little goat make? What we see here is the work of a demon, a monster. He is the one to blame. Time out. If we're considering, they're calling this, we are describing this individual in this book as a monster, a demon, for this reaction, having this reaction to having his goats being taken away. I wonder, what's the difference? What's the difference between that and Yahweh not getting the animal sacrifices that he demands? What is his punishment for not giving him the appropriate sacrifice, I wonder? Because he has a lot of death penalties for things. And he is a very vengeful God. Just like this character, Anak. It's very Old Testament-y, honestly, of Anak. It's very Old Testament-y. It is very Old Testament-like. It is very Yahweh-like for Anak to be incredibly angry that he did not get the sacrifice that he asked for, and so demanded a human life. Because God does demand human lives. Yahweh demands human lives that are not born in the right nation or are not in the right religion. Well, that's the bigger issue. They're not in the right religion, so they're a problem. They can be treated as less, but same sentiment as here, as Anak Harafa. Isn't that wonderful? All right, let's get back to the story. And what about the Yarim? Asked Jeff, looking around at all of the gruesome markers. Looks like they made a real party of it. Dr. Cooper, too, was quite bothered about the markers. He looked at Ben Arba. Well, how do you feel about it? Do you have any idea what these mean? Ben Arba could feel Dr. Cooper's gaze cutting into him. He finally answered, I might, and looked carefully at the markers, one at a time. walking from one to the next. Sometimes he shook his head in puzzlement. At other times, his eyes narrowed as if the marker was telling him something. Then he stood in the middle of them all and let his eyes move around the circle as if reading them. He faced Dr. Cooper and said, "We should get back to our camp, Doctor, and very quickly." End of chapter 6. Yes. Next time we shall pick up with chapter 7. And I should not have switched the camera around, because, I mean, this is good practice for me, but... So, how are you enjoying the story so far? I mean, I hope you're leaving likes and comments. I don't ask for them very much, so I hope you're being generous with them. Not to guilt trip you or anything. Oh, no, but no, really, I do appreciate it. Any likes, subs, shares that you can do, I really do appreciate it for this channel. I know this series right now isn't very big or important. It's just, you know, entertainment, really. But again, I want to reiterate that I have another video that's going to be coming up unrelated to this, you know. And think of it as a warm-up to the next video I will be making. That has nothing to do with the book that we're going through right now. This has to do with, honestly, our rights. Bottom line. Political manipulation that we all need to watch out for. I mean, this affects everyone. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. It doesn't matter what your religion is. Well, it kind of does, to a degree, because it is in regards to protecting a certain religion above others. An actual bill that we're going to talk about that is in direct, from what I'm understanding and from what a lot of other people are saying, is in direct violation of the Constitution and of our Bill of Rights. So I'm going to be talking about that. Going to be bringing some light to that. And like I said, it is going to be, even though it is its own separate video, it is in essence a warm up to this thing that I've mentioned before, some very heavy information about the Jewish religion that I have been holding in my back pocket for a while, that is not very popular to talk about, and could potentially make things, it could potentially make life difficult for me, because I believe the most difficult parts of a religion should be talked about, because those are direct and blatant signs of weakness in that religion. And when religions refuse to talk and acknowledge it and put it on display and take accountability for it, that makes the religion look suspicious. It's like hiding the weeds in your garden instead of just going in and re-establishing your understanding of the difference between a weed and a necessary plant. And weeds come in all shapes and sizes. They can have flowers. Dandelions are considered a type of weed, even though you can use them for useful things. Marijuana, type of weed. But when you're growing something very specific, you do not want weeds in your garden. And religion is supposed to help you be a better person. But these are things, and the reason, and one of the main reasons why I am bringing up this issue with this religion, not in the next video, it's going to boil, you're going to know which religion. You might have already guessed it, because of how much we talk about it, how much I talk about it on this channel. But it is necessary for us to discuss as well, because I have been seeing some connections between what I see on the news and what I have come across. This information specifically about the religion that I have in my back pocket. Information that is not well known. But we will get to it in the appropriate time. I may not agree with everything in the Bible, but I do agree with a few things. One of which is something that Jesus said. Or it might have been one of his followers. I'm not quite sure. It's been a long time. But it's one of the things that the Bible says is, be sure your sin will find you out. So, stay accountable so it doesn't have to find you out. Stay safe. And until next time, farewell.